show. It looks like
Come
we're
on,
live.
world.
I don't know who's going to make it. It's me and Josh Long, but it looks like he's sitting in the dark. I can barely
Well,
see him.
um,
Hiding in the shadows.
yeah, under the blood moon. Well, I gotta get a better light. So I'm at my friend's futon in LA.
It's fine. This is probably
It's
fine.
This is fine.
So
I
I
don't
don't,
have
I don't know who's going to jump in. We invited everyone, but
everybody.
we invited the Spring Central Twitter account.
What about Cloud Foundry?
I did invite the Cloud Foundry account too.
Well, we should get like the Cloud Central.
And if anyone wants to join, they should Twitter at me. Let's see if anyone did that yet.
I want it. Let's see. I don't know what's been going on this last week. I've been a little heads down. I went to that other country.
You were a road warrior. You did the Spring One stuff, of course.
Yeah,
And
that
then
was fun.
we shipped you off to the Netherlands to teach them
Yeah,
all about cloud native Java.
that was super cool. And yeah, we did this. We did all this software, and of course, software without the ability to deploy it doesn't mean much. So I was a little worried about getting a room full of people all stood up with Cloud Foundry and all that, and they killed it. That was the only lab we got done before the time allotted.
Which was the only lab?
The here, get your CF signed up, get your hey, there's a boy, Kenny.
Hey guys.
Welcome aboard. So that was the only one that they got done. Like they managed to deploy everything we had built up until that point into Cloud Foundry, and even the hardest part was undoing some of the cute scripting the shell script I had was doing for the Windows folks, and they even got past all that. Everybody, that was really cool. We had spent the week. Docker Compose doesn't work on Windows, so we had spent the week in a lot of pain on that kind of stuff. So then to be able to just go to Cloud Foundry, it's just like, oh yeah, CF push and all just kind of works. You're muted.
I'm muted?
No. Little ideas. Is he? I can hear you, Kenny.
Now?
I can hear you now.
Weird, my headphones didn't work. Let's try that again.
How bizarre.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay. There must be some weird software bug. I don't know.
Blood moon.
I was just asking for the people who don't have all the context, why don't you give a little, like you're basically teaching people how to write a bunch of stuff, connecting microservice, cloud, Spring Boot, Spring Cloud stuff onto Cloud Foundry. And then the other thing I was curious about, you said they got through this one section. What did they get stuck on?
Throughout the week, or just that one lab?
I mean, it's choose your own adventure. Tell me.
Yeah, so it was a 3-day thing, right? So the beginning of the week was fraught with the usual setup, right? Because I said, okay, I'm gonna have these people use Zipkin. We're gonna use a database. We're gonna use a message queue. We're gonna use just all these sort of infrastructure pieces. And in the very beginning, it was on your local desktop. So we thought, oh, I'll use the new virtual machine. I'll bring in Docker scripts, come on to that. And of course, that meant that the first half day was just getting that craziness to work on various people's laptops. But then we were off to the races. And then, of course, the first day was, here's Spring Boot, here's how to build an app. Second day was, here's how to build microservices, manage the complexity, how to spread it out to these other interesting things like a service registry and a distributed tracing system like Zipkin. And then third day was, I want to operationalize it with Cloud Foundry. And then on the second part of the third day, because that part I didn't think we were going to get that much further down the road, so I was very impressed. But the second part was, okay, well, I want to do messaging and so on, right? So we actually had a little bit extra time for that. But the stuff they hit was mostly the Docker stuff, because Docker Compose doesn't work on Windows. I would have actually been better off just bringing in a virtual machine with all the stuff loaded up.
Interesting. So why didn't you just start with Cloud Foundry as the thing right out of the gate?
To be honestly, now this is the first time I've done that workshop. I regret not doing that, and the reason was because I I don't know if you remember, I did workshops on this stuff years ago, and for me it was always just this. I thought everybody had Docker, and it would be a pulling teeth to get people to set up an account on PDubs and just download CF, and I didn't want to lose the inertia on the first day, but of course we ended up losing the inertia anyway because of Docker. So yeah, I should have just done it from CF. It would have actually gone faster. Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
And then how you think that the people absorb the stuff you showed them, and how many of them were familiar with these ideas and circuit breakers and whatever
yeah.
configuration, service discovery, the rest of it.
Well, you know the market, right? So a lot of the people that come to Spring are people that have got a feel for Spring, but so I think it really jars them when they see this stuff and it doesn't look anything like it. So a lot of these people knew about Cloud Foundry and they'd probably even used it. In fact, we even had two customers that were in the room and they didn't raise their hand. They didn't tell me that. I didn't know that.
So, so you think it jars them when they go to Spring Boot, or when they go to what?
Well, surely, yeah, Spring Boot is a little jarring, but Spring Cloud is a completely different paradigm, right? There's nothing like that in what we've talked about in the last 12 years. This is a completely different architecture, so that was jarring. Yeah, like that was really jarring, and for them to see that there's this, not only is there this whole rich architecture that looks nothing like what we've talked about before, but it's all there and it's all built on this Spring Boot thing. So I think part of it was, yeah, these people are coming from Spring, some of them, great. Here's what it looks like. That's jarring. And then the people that hadn't seen this stuff, that was even more jarring. They're just coming at it from straight Java. Um, yeah, I feel like the Netherlands are a pretty clued in country. You don't find a lot of people
Yeah,
ignoring what's happening.
I met some really smart technologists in the Netherlands before, in Amsterdam.
Yeah. So yeah, that was it was cool. I got good reviews, despite me basically, because I was not. This is a first time doing it, so there's nothing about this that was rehearsed. Uh, I, yeah, the cloud funding thing. We even had so the guys from the local field team came in, and one of the guys from the field team, he came in and did a whiz bang demo of PCF, and we did a little bit of hand waving, saying this is the stuff that you know if you want to remove a lot of the noise, we've had a lot of the sort of conceptual noise from what we've done for the last 2 days, and you want to just have these pieces available to you, that's Spring Cloud Services, and here's what the ops manager looks like, and here's all this extra stuff, and of course I'm not sure if it's just because it was really interesting or it's because he was also able to speak Dutch, but that actually created this really long discussion. I had more questions in that first 4 hours in the morning when we talked about Cloud Foundry and that
Interesting.
stuff. Yeah, they all spoke pretty good English, as you know, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's just interesting
So,
for them.
so speaking of not rehearsing, while you were there, I went over to London, uh,
I heard good things.
and actually, I joined up with a number of other people that were kind of from this ecosystem, the little Cloud Foundry group, and Bridget joined me from our team, and then Colin from Cloud Credo was there at this conference in London called Operability.
Mr. Humphreys.
Yeah, yeah, and he's a good guy, and he's got all the Cloud Foundry stuff going, and he's also pretty handy with the Java, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the theme of the conference was, well, the name of the conference is Operability, which kind of gives away the theme of the conference as well. I feel like it's sort of an extension of some of the ideas that have been building up around, the DevOps days and the Velocity conference, but this is sort of a uniquely London conference for one thing, but then also kind of growing out of a group that had been, I don't know if it's the proper way to frame it, but I think predominantly focused on platform as a service.
Right.
Marco and some of these other guys, and so they asked me to come talk about stuff, and I was, as I want to do, kind of delirious, getting off a plane, jamming out some slides, and then giving a presentation totally jet lagged first thing in the morning in London, and
Small
after,
world.
yeah, exactly. Uh, so I'm not sure I made all the points that I wanted to make as clearly as I wanted to make them, but the theme for my talk was this tension in the way things have evolved, kind of in the DevOps automation space, and also the system architecture, developer side of things, between building better tools to operate things, and the power that comes from operating with these tools, and then actually building things that are more operable in the first place, right? So you can improve your tooling, and you can improve your process, and you can improve all these other things, but sometimes some things are kind of difficult uh, to operate anyway, and so that doesn't help you that as much as you thought it could or should if you're not actually able to take advantage of the if you're not able to frame that, and honestly, this is what I've come to understand is actually the kind of the more important in some ways than the deployment, which was like the point of contact between developers and operations for much of this conversation in the DevOps world. It's like the point where they sort of have to deal with each other is a deployment, but actually operating in an ongoing fashion. If you have the understanding of what it takes to build something that's operable, ingrained in your developers, and one way to do that really fast is to make them wear a pager.
Yeah.
Then you get drastically different outcomes than if you just sort of humanize each other, which isn't
Right.
a bad idea either. But anyway, it was fun.
I think
People,
that. Oh yeah.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say that resonates super well with what we experienced in that workshop. The operationalizing, the production ready bits. How can you write software that is mature enough to be something that your operations people, or the guy next to you or the gal next to you is gonna want to be able to deploy and run. If you haven't thought about these things, you're gonna get suffering. It's
Hey, and
not just operations, not just software.
where do you think the disconnect is between the devs and ops, really? Is it empathy? What do you think?
I think empathy is a big part of it, and to me, I have a tweet from a while ago that says empathy is proportional to suffering, and I think that what happens in so many different organizations is that and this isn't unique to developers and operators. I think it's unique. It's expected whenever you have someone who is uh, in a far line, if at all, from the actual consequences of a decision. So when a developer doesn't have any consequences for their decision making, their bad decision making, the operational impact of their decision making, then their incentive to make good decisions about those things is very, very low, right? And so you can mitigate that a little bit by humanizing the operations people, and having that relationship be strong, but nothing fixes it faster, in my opinion, than having the developers be the frontline operational responsibility for their own code, which means if you write it, you run it. If it's broken, you're waking up. Like, that's the deal.
But I do think there's also an inherent drag because that the code you're talking about, first of all, it's not fun, it's boring, and it has to be done for every project. So I think developers, nobody wants to go home and write that, right? So if you have something that builds it in as much as
Absolutely.
possible.
No, I mean, and that's where I think some of the stuff we're talking about with there's two things that we've been framing lately in our own positioning, and that is this notion of the cloud native application framework, which is, essentially from our perspective, from Pivotal's perspective, Spring Cloud and Spring Boot. But certainly those capabilities don't necessarily have to be from those libraries, and they don't have to be Java. We just happen to to own those and do those all the time. But we're talking more about the capabilities of service discovery and configurations and
Tracing.
tracing and load balancing and all of it, circuit breakers, the rest of it. This looks like Lego bricks for building microservices. And then the other thing that I think is interesting that plays into this is this notion, at least the way we're articulating it now, is you need a cloud native culture, right? Like the way that these things have been built and operated is not what Kenny's.
I'm hearing ghosts.
No,
Echoes.
Here, on me.
What you should actually do is I've noticed that like the algorithm that Google uses gets off kilter, and if you leave and come back, then it'll often fix it. There's some sort of software filtering that gets off cycle.
Okay, I'll do that.
Just hang out.
Yeah.
Oh, that was. Did you just reboot? The algorithm. You
We I,
just
re, I rebooted Kenny. So the point here is that you kind of need to have an empowered culture, and empowered to me means you also take responsibilities for the things. So like you get self-service deployments, but you also only get to deploy this Lego brick or this collection of Lego bricks that we know have predictable scaling and failure characteristics. And then when you are, because you're so empowered, when your code breaks, then you should be the first one to know.
yeah.
But there's
Yeah,
also, I think, in this new world, a tendency to build things that can be operated under what I'll call continuous partial failure.
yeah.
Right?
Graceful degradation.
Graceful degradation and continuous partial failure. As you get to some scale in a distributed system, the probability that a component is failing at any one time approaches a certainty.
Yeah. So how quick is time to remediation? I love that. I like Simon Wardley was talking about that. Simon, going back to the earlier thing, this idea of atoms for building reliable software. These, what is the cork of your system, right? And he was talking about. He said, yeah, where it's the Cloud Foundry, and I'll take it a step further, the cloud native architecture, that there's an opinionated bit to that, right? But they all have, each piece of it has a well-known characteristics in production and at runtime, right? And if you combine and compose these opinionated things, you get real great things quickly. And he likened it to bricks versus clay. Of course, clay is amorphous and infinite possibility, but not particularly good for scaling out a city.
Yeah, I saw some of
Oh,
those tweets. Go ahead.
I like what you said there, Josh. So it's really interesting, right? This idea of composition. It keeps coming up, right? So this Lego brick thing, it's more about how we put things together, the relationships between these Lego bricks. That's what's really interesting about Spring Cloud Data Flow, right? It's really a composition of different modules that integrate, and you can customize those basically just from the command line. So I think that's a really interesting part of what distributed systems brings. It brings composition, which I think is great.
Yeah, and one of those other big things we just announced at Spring 1.
The data flow stuff.
Yeah, that was another module that was pretty hot. That was you show them the sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it's an interesting thing because the Spring XD work had basically replicated a lot of the, not necessarily exactly the same functionality, but very similar functionality to do the elastic runtime stuff. And so then Dataflow is essentially replatforming Spring XD onto the Cloud Foundry runtime.
Yeah, which is super convenient now, right? Less work for them and better results anyway.
Yeah, it just means we don't have two teams working on solving what is almost an identical problem with a nearly identical solution. One just happened to be in Java, one happened to be in Go.
Yeah, I think anybody who's tried to write distributed cron, eventually you're gonna try and solve it, and then you realize maybe not. Just back away. Just gets nasty. They're built on top of they're building on top of Cloud Foundry and Lattice, of course. And now it's an SPI, so you can plug in the bit underneath that actually does the scheduling. And then, of course, each one of those platforms, those technologies, has the ability to tell you health and all that. So you can now have there's a common enough set of components that it can feed that all back directly. And then even better, now you can describe, as Kenny was just saying, you can describe sources and sinks and streams in terms of the legs and their journey.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, and it's like a unified model for the batching and the streaming, where you have I don't know all the sources and sinks it supports right now, but last time I saw the list, it was more than a few.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know them off the top of my head, but all these message queues and Twitter and whatever.
Yeah.
And then that gives you like the same basic dynamic fabric to build those data apps and analytics apps, and then hook them right to your whatever apps. Your front ends with essentially the same programming model. I don't know. It's kind of early days for it, but I think it's really compelling once you see what people could do with it.
Right, and then the thing that I love is, yeah, sure, you get the demo and you do the DSL and you're on the shell and you're composing these streams, and you're just literally using the bash pipe model, like component in, pipe, component out, pipe. That same composition mechanism, you can now create your own very easy. It's always been possible, but now since it's all rebased on Spring Boot and it's part of Spring Cloud Stream, you can take your Spring Cloud Stream modules, and those are just boot and Spring Cloud bits, and those
So
become things you can compose in that stream. So now you can talk to anything your code talks to.
I want to see if I can show my slides from operability, at least one little section of them. I want to
Do
do the
it.
whole thing. I want to see if it'll work. Let's see if we can get this to work.
You
So
could
what I'm
just
going to
change
do,
it to open mic night, even open keynote night.
open Keynote. All right, let's see if I can figure out how to do this. All right.
Otherwise, I've got some cat pictures. I mean, we can go to that. Okay.
All right, so tell me if this goes full screen when I do this.
No, it's just Kenny.
Can you see me?
Yours just says cloud and it's black. No, but
Is it black?
no, now it's just Kenny. I don't see it. It's just black screen for
Huh.
yours. Yeah.
I'm trying to share it.
Actually, I see it.
I see. What? I don't see
If I
it.
go,
On the cloud, I see it.
well, I tried to play the presentation, and that makes it go to full screen. So then, did it show the slides or not?
For me, it didn't. Did you see it, Kenny?
Yeah, I see it.
Let me.
When you full screens it?
Tell me if you see it right now. Yes or no?
It hasn't changed.
Do you see Mickey Mouse?
Yeah, but it's in Keynote. I can still see the frame, the Chrome.
So if I change that, do you see it change or no?
No, I think it's actually stuck or something. It looks like you pressed the button for play and it hasn't progressed beyond that.
All right. Hold. Let's keep talking. I'll see if I can figure out how to do this.
There we go. But what actually changed? But you're still in Chrome. I can still see the Keynote bits.
All right. I'm going to stop that. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to figure out how to do this.
So, Kenny, oh buddy, oh pal,
Yes.
how's your what is it now? A couple weeks, year? I don't know. It's been a minute. How long have you been with us? How's that going?
It's been about 3 weeks now. Yeah.
Feels
It's been really
feels
good.
like 100 years.
Yeah. It's been a whirlwind so far. Yeah.
Did you didn't talk to that creepy guy in the hall, did you?
Wait, which one?
The one I told you about, the
one.
creepy guy.
No, I don't remember him.
Okay, good. Phew. He just lurks there in every office. We don't know why he's there.
What are you trying to show us, Kenny?
Okay, yeah. So can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay, so
I
I
can see yours.
created this little library, this JavaScript library that ideally is going to be able to let you show how you can compose things in Spring Cloud Dataflow modules. And so what you're seeing right here is really kind of a partial animation, but you have a source, which is Spring Boot, and that's processing a log. So every 5 seconds, it's outputting a log. And that's going into a processor here, this Lightning Bolt. And that's going to split that stream into 2 different types of timestamps and pass it to the next processor, which is going to do another transformation. And then eventually it's going to wind up in the sink where all the things go after their process. So this is just something I'm working on just to show kind of how data flow works and the composability. So looking forward to blog about this. It's pretty cool.
We should talk to our dear friend Mr. Clement about this. I think he's got something. You guys should talk. We'll make that.
So is this visualizing something real, or it's just dots like running around on the screen?
So the JavaScript here, the library that I've created, essentially it's created to allow you to visualize real-time streaming, but there's going to be so much data that's flowing through the system, it's going to be pretty impossible to kind of quantize it or make it discrete enough so that you can visualize it. So this is really kind of just a learning tool that I'm going to use for blog posts. Maybe more of a design tool, but it's cool. It kind of gives you an idea.
Interesting. All right, I got a new idea. Let's try this. I'm going to share my screen,
Stand back.
entire screen. Let's try this.
Okay, I'm gonna.
And then let's see if this works. If I go full screen, what do you
Okay.
see?
Yay! Nope. Wait. Hold
I
on.
see it.
What does it say?
You can either easily manage complex systems at scale.
All right,
What he said.
I'm going back. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze it on me. So then, whoa, that's like
Oh.
infinity.
Infinite idea.
All right, how's that?
Taboo.
All right, this is actually a slide that I had indexed since like 2008. I've been using it for a long time. So these are buzzwords. So you guys can see me changing it, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is kind of the talk I gave in London, but this is a little bit more informal and less zany. All right, I've shown this slide a little bit before. All these things, all these buzzwords, DevOps, cloud native, continuous delivery, microservices, whatever. These are the same thing, and these are just the patterns that emerged in organizations that deliver highly available applications continuously at scale. Dun, dun, dun. All right, now the fun. And just so happened to change everything. I think you're, someone's echoing again. All right, well, what actually changed? So this is a little story about automation. So previously, someone learned how to do automation. That's me, get in the hat. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make things do stuff. I'm going to make a lot of things do stuff. And then next thing I knew, you guys see the animation? Now you're all muted. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see it.
There's an obvious shout out. Now, this is the next thing. Okay, ready? So the problem is, and this is a point I'm trying to make a little minute ago, with the types of things that you build can resist automation. The types of things that you build can resist being operated. So in this diagram, this person is trying to accomplish what exactly?
Rube Goldberg machine of the worst sort.
What I believe he's trying to accomplish is he's trying to use the napkin. Right? So
Automatically as he spoons himself.
automatically use the napkin. And so there's a lot of systems, and I did this, I live this, where you find what's there and you don't really understand why it's there, but you're going to automate it. And so then you're like, yay, automation, and it sort of looks like this. Way better. That's such an improvement. And then now you're like, I should just do a lot of that. And then pretty soon you're playing Tetris with your little robot. And you're like, why isn't this better?
Yeah. Sympathy, man.
Why isn't this better? So this is the fundamental lesson of Tetris.
Huh. Okay.
You play
That's a
Tetris.
I like
for
that.
a while.
Yeah.
I think this also applies to most operations. But in the real game, the blocks don't just sit still. Most people are playing a game that looks like this.
Oh.
And then
Is there one where the angles are involved?
then they start doing stuff like this.
Oh. I bet Josh loves that slide.
Oh yeah. It's probably fine.
Probably.
Anyway, I thought it was amusing to me.
Well, basically, I feel like most large organizations, the ones that don't have unicorns, they end up getting those Rube Goldberg machines, and it's just. You ever see the MythBusters Rube Goldberg machine?
I'm not certain what you're talking about.
There's a Rube Goldberg machine, the one you were just showing.
I know of Rube Goldberg machines as a concept.
Yeah, so there's a MythBusters episode, Christmas special, it's like 2012 or whatever, if you get a chance. Best actual Rube Goldberg machine I've seen. You know, some guy throws a marble down. I forget what it was, some trigger, and then this long, crazy, belabored process just to do something. Or 1,000 things, you know, all based on engineered coincidence and engineered sort of one little thing and it doesn't work, but it worked just fine. Check it out. I don't know. It's one of my favorite MythBusters episodes.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Fine.
So going back to what you said, Andrew, about the Tetris blocks, I think really what I get from it is that you can't automate communication, you can't automate people, You can't automate how people integrate to solve problems. You can't really automate intelligence. So
That's
I
not
think
really
it's a
the
really good
point.
quote.
That's not what I was trying to make. The point there. I mean, in a sense, it's like if it's just me by myself, right, and I'm building something, what I build, hopefully I can communicate with myself, which is probably debatable. But what I build has qualities that make it more or less operable, right? And certainly as we layer these things on top of each other and add more people, and then the Conway's law takes over, then the communication is a big part of it. But the main point here is the quality of something that can be automated is fundamentally different when you're looking at things that are taking into account from first principles what it means to be a distributed system, what it means to have the possibility for failure, right? Like out of the box, if you even have circuit breakers as an idea, you're already way ahead in terms of thinking about partial failure than someone who doesn't have that pattern.
I feel like a lot of people are still struggling. If you read Continuous Delivery, the Jez Humble, if you read that, he talks at length about getting software to the point where you can test it. And he goes through these painful, like, different examples of, like, binary-only tools that you can only operate through drag and drool and stuff that just is resistant to testing. And I feel like once you get past that, there's a lot of people who are still trying to get past that world, to be able to automatically test stuff. So
I mean, that's the funny thing there is people read continuous delivery, and for some reason, not everyone connects the dots. It's predicated on continuous integration for some reason,
Yeah.
or at least if they didn't, a lot of people didn't even read the book. They just heard the word, and then they're like, "Yeah, I want to deploy 10 times a day. That would be great."
More chaos every day. Yeah, I know.
I remember, and this was in between continuous delivery, the book coming out, and John Allspaw and Paul Hammond's talk of velocity when they were still at Flickr, deploying 10 times a day. That there were people who came to me, and I was doing the DevOps stuff all the time, like full on, and they'd come to me and they'd almost be in tears, and they'd be talking about how someone saw that talk, and then someone saw that talk, and then they used that as an excuse for why they should deploy 10 times a day, without going through like any of the other aspects of the culture or the safeguards that were in place that enabled that. And so the ops people that were downstream from this happening were their lives were not better, right? Like
I'm sure they thought the software people lost their minds.
Well, in this example, the software people, and if you go look at the relationship between Paul Hammond and John Allspaw and the way that they were doing those things, everyone had a very, very high level of empowerment and trust for each other, and some of that trust is predicated on doing the right thing when things go wrong, where in some places that try to adopt this kind of continuous delivery practice without regard for the safeguards or that empowered trust weren't actually taking the responsibility for their own decisions, and still, like I said a minute ago, they're in that full loop and doing deployments, but they're not actually operating it or not actually the one getting paged, and they didn't care. We'll deploy. Why not deploy 20 times a day?
Throw it over the wall. And Allspaw even talked about that, right? He said, like, we did it 10 times a day, but we only did it 10 times a day because it worked 10 times a day. If we had done it 10 times a day and it seg faulted or everything came crashing down, we wouldn't have done it.
Well, the other thing that those guys, and this was already in place by then, is they had relatively sophisticated monitoring, and that's, to me, monitoring is kind of extending TDD to your live systems, right? And
the most interesting man in the world.
So at the point where you do a deployment, if all your graphs all of a sudden change to be unhappy, then your work is not done, right?
Yeah.
Your work just started.
So I used to work at this company called Shopzilla, and they had a really sophisticated graphing ethic. Like, everything was visualized, and they were super. For every bit of code, there was at least two bits of reports, that were out there telling you something about what the code was doing before you got to commit it, after it was committed,
What
and then
year
when it was
did you
running.
work there?
2009, yeah, 2009, 2010. So end of 2009, 2010, and that was it was really crazy because now you look fast forward 5 years, and of course the some of the most useful features in Spring Boot are these connectors that talk to these graphing systems, these metrics
Absolutely.
and visually, having that stuff out of the box native.
Right. So another slide I showed, and I'll just pull this up. I won't share my whole screen. So everyone's real excited about this paper from Google, and I'm excited about it too because for a long time it was a mystery.
Which one?
The Borg paper.
Oh, right.
So the Borg is a tool that Google considered a competitive advantage for basically ever.
And what's
And
changed, I wonder?
what's that?
What's changed, I wonder? What's Borg got next?
So if you follow the whole story, Borg was a thing, and then let's see if I can get rid of these. Borg was a thing, and then Omega was a new scheduler on top of Borg. So people get a little bit confused about that. So Borglets are the agents that Borg uses to control things, and then the original Borg scheduler was replaced by Omega. This is my understanding.
Cool.
And then, for whatever reason, Google decided to invest in Kubernetes, which is sort of an evolution of some of those ideas. But what they didn't release with Kubernetes, at least not yet, is any sort of scheduler. And so everyone, it's an interesting paper because it talks about how this scheduler works and all these other things that are happening, how they built the system and operated it, and it mentions Kubernetes as well.
Cool.
So let me pull. I got the slide now. So I'm going to share this one slide.
So what is the Aurora? The Twitter Aurora? They're using Mesos, right? Not.
So Mesos is kind of like a spiritual recreation of Borg.
Right. Everybody's trying to do the Google thing. But
Well, it was actually my understanding, and you can go read the history of Mesos on, some of the websites or Wikipedia or whatever. Is there's engineers that were ex-Google, and then there's some researchers at Berkeley, and they were trying to do this sort of scheduling thing, and then they saw that, and they were working at Twitter now, and so then they were like, well, let's use this kind of as the basis to rebuild some of the stuff that we used to have when we were behind the veil at Google.
sounds so much more ominous that way. So
Ominous.
yes, the veil. Well, I just think of the curtain, the Iron Curtain, the multicolored Google curtain.
All right, so this is the slide.
By the way, do we like the new logo? I think I do.
Which new logo?
The Google one. I'm still stuck on that. I know it's 2 months old or whatever, but
Yeah, no comment, whatever.
okay.
So this is the slide, and this is one sentence in that paper. I would wager if people understood that one sentence, they would just right out of the box, if they build applications with that in mind, get
Spring Boot does it for you.
They get with 50% of the benefit of having any of this automation.
Yep. You can't fix it if you can't measure it. Super obvious.
If your apps can't tell you when they're in trouble, what's going to?
Yep. Yeah.
And that was ingrained in their operational mindset. And they, whatever, someone thought it was important enough to put that sentence there, but it just stood out to me as a big deal, and no one else seemed to be spun up on it. But that's the forest through the trees right there, guys.
So, question. So, what consumes all this information? Is it I guess that's the question. What consumes the information that's published by these jobs? They have a embedded HTTP server.
Graphite or something like that.
I mean, inside Google, there's different things you could imagine. It's not really explicit how they were leveraging that in the way the paper's written, but you could imagine all sorts of stream processing, complex event processing. I don't know. Just what would help your thing do better things with the information, and you probably evolve over time to understand patterns of failure and then how to remediate them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Nurse, Twitter. Is that Twitter?
So this analytics then can be put back into the system to improve operations, maybe automatically.
I mean, this is the other thing that I don't think people understand, and I show this slide at operability, but I've also shown it so many times. If you Google Andrew Schaefer technical debt, you'll see when I wrote about this in 2009 or 10 or whatever. But basically, the operations is a competitive advantage. In 2007, this graphic shows or claims that operations is the secret sauce of startups, and shows this graph of one startup doing, and it's all sort of hypothetical in the graph. Actually, let me just get it. Fine. Probably fine. Hold on. So this was on O'Reilly Radar 2007.
Yes.
So the argument here is that on the left you have traditional operations, which has the graph with the colors. You could consider the cost of operating something or the number of hours, but hours is a proxy for cost. And then the bottom bar graphs is showing the number of servers over some time. And I've taken this apart and put it back together so many times that I think there's different parts of the way this is presented and the scale that could kind of be improved to make it better, and maybe it's worth updating it. And maybe I should call my friends at O'Reilly and publish that on Radar. But basically, on the left-hand side, you can see that over time, as you scale, that you're going to incur greater costs with the upkeep. As you grow, that kind of linearly grows at a slope that is as bad as you don't want to have to deal with. And then on the right side, with this kind of secret sauce operations approach, then you're spending a bit more time up front, although that might actually be a little bigger unless you're initiated in the ways of the DevOps, if you will. Then over time, you pay less and less for the upkeep, even as you scale. Your incremental costs are relatively meager, and so the argument that I made, basically in O'Reilly Radar then and now is that this is a interest on technical debt in your operations, and so by making those investments to control your technical debt, making those investments to basically get rid of it, then you have opportunity to operate at different levels of scale and economy compared to traditional approaches.
So you're saying thinking about it up front and just making that part of the design, you're gonna win, right? I mean that. Okay.
I mean, in this case, I think that there's sort of a baseline capabilities. It's not even so much about thinking up front. It's just like so much stuff gets deployed without basic configuration management, or without basic monitoring, or without basic all these things that you would need to steer your craft. When you move to something, obviously, like the platforms that we're working on now, so much more of that baseline is already in place for you.
And it's in place when you're building the software. That's the other thing, is now it's so much easier to get what is production to be the same on development, so you can afford to think about it as you're developing. It used
Absolutely.
to be that development was a completely different exotic thing,
I mean, that's been my mantra since 2008, though, is that you should be able to rebuild all these environments from scratch at will.
Yeah.
It's taken us a while for everyone to kind of get up to speed on that, and obviously the platform work that's being done makes that more feasible for more people. But even going back to 2008, I was advocating being able to rebuild all of your infrastructure from the basic images up through the code in an automated fashion.
Right, version control it and all that, sure. But I mean, yeah, I agree. I just feel like out of sight, out of mind, and if you can't get it running in a local Windows box, it was going to be out of sight, you know. And now I think
Absolutely.
even if you're just embracing continuous integration, you now have the ability to push to production. You know, you have this ethic of like, even though I can't afford to stand it up on my local machine, we certainly have an integration environment we can run all our tests in, and that encourages you to start hitting these bugs, this feedback that you get from actually running this stuff. You get it
So
earlier.
yeah. So you mentioned continuous delivery, which is a great book, and there's probably a bunch of nuggets in there. Did anyone ever read Release It?
Yes, Michael Nygaard, my favorite tome. I talk about it in every one of my talks. Production readiness. Code complete is not the same as production ready.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that is in the Netflix open source is kind of straight out of that book.
Yep. And that was what, 2007? Yeah, like and even some stuff that's not, and I think we should spend more time on, like, you got to configure thread pools, man. Just keep that stuff cleaned up. Yeah, there's just so much good. It's a classic tome, and I just feel like you take that, take continuous delivery, and of course take this brand new book from O'Reilly that Kenny Bastani and I are writing called Cloud Native Java. Wink. Due January 2016. And you'll
When
have the perfect trifecta of win.
when is that book coming?
January 2016. If I stop sucking, Kenny's picking up the slack, so that's cool.
It's on track. We're gonna do this.
I believe in us.
And what's the topics you're gonna? I mean, a lot of it's we've already sort of danced around tonight, but what's the topic in your book?
Well, but basically tonight, we could just not write the book. We could just show them this video. We could show them the hangout and just like do that instead.
And be like Cloud Native Java. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. We did it. Laid it down.
Just say circuit breakers over and over.
Yeah, exactly. Microservices. Yeah. No, a lot of it is just sort of obviously the workshop that I just did, and I think that's sort of what we're talking about at Pivotal, right? Is um, the cloud native architecture in terms of and through the perspective of a modern Java developer today, and naturally that implies Cloud Foundry. I don't want to write software that I can't then deploy safely, right? And I want to do it quickly and safely. So what does that mean? Well, it means Cloud Foundry. It means being able to extend the platform, being able to extend what the platform gives you. And there's going to be stuff in there that's just sort of not as glamorous, but it's certain. Okay, we're going to talk about Spring Cloud, of course. We'll talk about Spring Boot. We'll talk about Cloud Foundry. We're also going to talk about how to use Spring Boot to extend Cloud Foundry, like to create a service broker. Is that a super fun conference talk? No, but should you know how to do it? Yeah. Like so one of the benefits of a book, you can expand a little bit, or how to build smart hypermedia APIs.
So here's an interesting topic that we can kind of spin on for a second.
Okay.
Because I'm actually reading proposals for conferences. One of those conferences is the Cloud Foundry Summit coming up in Berlin, and there's a number of proposals about writing service brokers in various formats.
Right on. I sent a pull request that made the one for there's a Spring Boot template, so you just write a few beans, and it'll automatically stand up the REST API that matches the contract for the service broker. It doesn't do the async stuff, the async stuff in the service broker API. But no, can I get on this? Can I get in on this Cloud Foundry Summit Berlin action? Is it too late? Did I already miss it?
You missed the CFP.
9. That was appropriate because it's German. Never mind. That's the word for no.
Yeah, we got that. My last name is.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a CFP open for Shanghai.
I did that twice. I got an invitation to that one. I'm not going to miss that. I don't know if you know, but I kind of dig Shanghai.
There's another thing that's coming up in San Francisco for those Bay Area people, which are you two. And
yes.
That's there's a Cloud Foundry documentation sprint, and also the first Cloud Foundry meetup that's hosted at the offices of the Cloud Foundry Foundation.
I'll be there. Yeah, it's on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, I saw you signed up for the meetup, and then Bridget should be there, and I think Casey should be there. So coming across, we should have a pretty good. I'm trying to coax some of the. I don't know who will be there from engineering or other parts of Pivotal, but should be a good time. And then the goal is both to try to improve the Cloud Foundry documentation, make it a little more accessible, make it a little bit more approachable, and then also build build up some rapport with people in that ecosystem, and then there's some speakers, so it should be interesting.
Sounds like fun. So are there I gotta tell you, the documentation was pretty good when I just leaned on it last week at this workshop. That was not the problem I had.
What part of the documentation were you looking at?
The part that I considered very important, which is how to get these people from different operating systems started. That actually worked.
So
yeah, the docs are pretty good.
So you're talking about installing the CLIs and then hitting an endpoint, or
and running through a basic CF push, yeah.
But they didn't have to set up Cloud Foundry themselves, right? Like you're just
No.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's where we're trying to get a little bit more. I think you're right. Where the end user experience as a developer, getting the CLI set up, pushing into Cloud Foundry, that's not too shabby. Getting people spun up so they can actually have their own Cloud Foundry installed is a little bit more. A
nightmare.
That's not the word I would have chosen, but
it's a living nightmare. I had to drag people off billable hours at Pivotal Labs. I'm like, come here, you're gonna help me. Yeah. I wrote a script though.
It can be a bit opaque the first time you try to do it.
Yeah, it all actually boiled down to, when you distill the concepts, it boiled down to like a 10-line bash script, and 3 of those were brew things, just to get like Vagrant and whatever, So it really wasn't bad. It's just a lot of it I still don't even know what it does. There's even a comment like, "This is your dead chicken. Wave this dead chicken."
This is when we consult the bones.
It'll work. Just hold on. Yeah.
No, I mean that's the kind of stuff that I think it would behoove our ecosystem, Cloud Foundry ecosystem, to make that stuff more inviting and accessible to someone who's just wanting to check it out and poking around. I think from personal experience, and this has nothing to do with Cloud Foundry. When you go check out something and the docs are out of date and you're kind of getting like a bunch of broken instructions and trying to figure it out, like you have to really push through and have some serious motivation to get through the other side versus, oh yeah, it all just works. It's a very different, it's kind of like if you go into the garden and there's a bunch of weeds and it's like hard to get to the vegetable, so we're just trying to weed the garden.
And now that Cloud Foundry's got all these major components written in Go and it is so svelte, there's no reason why a lot of people couldn't run it locally. Just a simple. I mean, the Bosch Lite thing is proof of that, right? I have a 1-node Cloud Foundry cluster, and it works, and it fits on a regular, no extra, not like a crazy souped up Mac or anything. So yeah, it would be. I think a lot of people would love that. I think a lot of people love Lattice for that reason. It feels like I can get it started locally. But sometimes a lot of times you really want the extra bits, I want the contracts for things like the service broker stuff. That doesn't, you can't test that on Lattice.
Yes.
So that'd be cool.
So we have we've been doing this 52 minutes now. What we have any interesting things we want to talk about? It's kind of there's a tradition of telling secrets, but I don't know. Last week we didn't really have any secrets, and this week I don't feel inclined to tell secrets. Other than it seems like Cloud Foundry as a business has been pretty good to Pivotal. That's a secret, but not really.
So next week will be very interesting
to see
people who are looking at calendars.
To see Q3 close.
Yeah, that'll be we should tell secrets then. Keep them waiting.
Well, I didn't say that's all I'm telling anyone.
I mean, we'll know if the bad stuff happened if Andrew is still here. Like that'll be, if that happens, then there will be no Cloud Foundry with Andrew. So if he's back next week, just hold your breath. Same Afterdark time, same Afterdark channel.
It's probably
what will happen to our hero? It'll be fine. This will be fine.
So what else is going on? You're relatively new, Kenny. So I'm curious to hear what you're thinking about all this Spring Cloud Foundry stuff at this point.
So I am co-authoring a book on it, so I'm pretty fond of it. I would say it's a whirlwind of an ecosystem. I think coming into it fresh was, I had the Spring stuff down, Spring Cloud even, I did a couple blog posts. They were pretty successful. But then getting into the whole Cloud Foundry aspect, I like immediately when Josh demoed this to me, like I saw the win. I saw exactly how this could be applied to help so many people. I was in the finance domain at Digital Insight before I came to Pivotal, and this is something that there was a gap there, but we didn't know it existed, and it was exactly what we needed. And we used Spring Boot, Spring Cloud to create a new product. So I'm pretty hyped up about it and excited to be co-authoring the book with Josh because I just see the need for it all over the place, and that's just the truth from a developer.
Just out of curiosity, what were you guys using to do deployments before?
So we had I had to do all the stuff. So we have this thing called dev to deploy. I don't know how much I'm supposed to say, but basically we had Jenkins, and we had some Capistrano scripts that we would create. We had some recipes, and we would
You said Capistrano. I think that's probably all you need to say.
Exactly. Yeah. I had to learn that to create these jobs because the ops people were like, nope, we just guide you. And so I had to learn it, which was good experience. So we would just promote to the different environments through Jenkins. We'd have a build, we'd have a deploy, and we get it into production. So they were on quarterly releases, but this was the first product they built where we were agile and we were releasing every 2 weeks. So that was kind of a tough thing because everybody else was on this quarterly release schedule and integration was a pain in the ass, but that's pretty much how it worked.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we really needed something like Cloud Foundry.
I mean, in a sense, everyone in the industry is aspiring to build their own platform.
Yeah.
I mean, all the features that are in the thoughtful framing of Cloud Foundry right now, you either want something that's exactly like that, or you want something that's like almost like that, right? And so that's where you see like some nuanced differences of opinion, where it's like almost what they want. Like they want that capability, but only 85% of it, or like this slight tweak of it.
Yeah. So one of the things, so I had pitched the ops guys on this in my last couple of weeks there. It was a really good transition, and had a really good relationship with the ops guys there, and they were really interested in this concept. So they started exploring Docker, and I had to explain to them like this: you're still going to end up building your own thing. And I showed them Cloud Foundry, and I showed them that it can be customized. It's not just this big machine that you can't really go in there and customize the build packs. And so that they were really attracted to because they didn't want to lose the ability to customize these build packs, where with Docker, that's something that's going to be a little bit opaque inside of a container. So that was one of the pluses that they had.
This snowflake is mine. There are many others not like it, but this one is mine.
I think that's one of the things that's the most powerful, especially when you tie back to this operations conversation, is that the thoughtful layering that the platform gives you with the images at the layer of the virtual machines and then the root file systems on all the containers, that you have such this hygienic separation between that and then whatever is done by the build packs and then whatever's done by your code, that gives you a huge operational advantage when you're trying to do things like remediate Heartbleed or any one of these other CVEs, right? If you get something that you have to patch in some system that is a bespoke system with no hygiene, keeping track of a bunch of container images that you've just sort of put onto your system, then what's your strategy to go and remediate all those things? If you thought about it at all, then you probably started to have some hygiene and some separation and some layers, but now your build pipeline looks suspiciously like build packs anyway, so you might as well just use build packs.
Yeah.
I did that same mental loop a few times before I got Cloud Foundry. I think it's pretty obvious if you just trace through it for a minute, like what happens if I do this, and that.
Well, this
is lead to the cloud.
This is the interesting thing, and you end up in these conversations over and over. I really think there's certain aspects of this that you kind of can't learn until you did it wrong yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm starting to realize. like you can explain it over and over, and you're like, that's gonna hurt you, and they're like, I'm gonna do it, and you can't convince them otherwise until they do it at least once.
It's helpful that software is a team sport these days, and so you can see other people do it, and it hurts. So they don't actually. I think a lot of people just see other people suffer.
Well, I mean, part of it is, yeah. One, and this kind of goes back to the operability. I actually made some comments about how high our pain tolerance is in some of these regards, but I think some of it is like, and you sort of said this a minute ago, Kenny, when you're talking about your previous adventure, like you're in pain, you just don't know how much pain you're in, right? Like there's a solution to what you're doing. It's just that's how you do it, and so you just kind of take it for granted that that's how it should feel.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
So,
I think primarily not knowing that there's a better way. I think it took, one developer, me, really, to build a relationship with the ops guys because they were very insightful. They had a lot of experience. They were at Intuit prior to Digital Insight. There was a lot to be learned from them. That was really something that I wanted to do when I was leading this team, was to understand the operational aspects. So I spent a lot of time with them, and I built this relationship of trust. And through that, we kind of together found that pain. But I don't think it can come from one side. It'll always come from ops, but it has to too be something that's driven on the dev side. But they have to understand the operational pains as well. So I think it goes back to culture and it goes back to trust.
Well, I mean, if you go back to the Lego metaphor, then in some sense the dev's decisions are what pieces get dropped into the game, right?
Yeah.
And if you're smart, like I assume I am, or I'm becoming.
I agree.
My mom might argue, and my wife. But like, why do I want to play Tetris with all these effed up pieces? Why don't I just only drop the straight pieces? Like, why don't I just only drop maybe the cubes, the big cubes?
stop throwing snowflakes into Tetris, man.
Anyway, that's a good hour. You guys have any other topics you are burning a hole in your brain you want to talk about?
I can't wait to come back next week because it's gonna be. I don't know.
It's going to be.
So one of the things that I like about this framing of the cloud native framing is that, and not that Cloud Foundry was limiting per se, but there's all these things that in Cloud Foundry Afterdark you had to try to drag back to Cloud Foundry.
The app, the software on the top and the infrastructure on the bottom.
Well, or even just culture, everything. Where if you go to this cloud native framing, we can talk about Cloud Foundry, we can talk about Spring, we could talk about Mesos and Kubernetes if we want to. We could talk about Agile, we could talk about DevOps, and we don't have to like drag it back to one topic, right? And it's like, I mean, I would love to get more people on here from all the different ecosystems, the Cloud Foundry ecosystem, the Spring ecosystem. I'm sure occasionally we'll get some guests from other places, and we don't have to drag it back into, or at least we don't feel like we have to drag it back to Cloud Foundry. So Cloud, go ahead.
So, will Josh McKenzie still come and play with us?
I think he will occasionally. It's probably a little hard for him at this late time, so there'll be rare occasions when his time zone lines up with the opportunity. But I know you're always up late, Josh. So
kind of true.
But I look forward to trying to have like a little bit of kind of like an intense exploration of a bunch of these ideas. And I for one think that the confluence of the cloud native application framework that we keep talking about, whether it's Spring or there's a bunch of other options. Although when I talk to you guys, it's always Spring, obviously.
Not that we don't know about other ones. It's just
people do build things with JavaScript from time to time.
I've heard such things, but like the Higgs boson particle up until 2 years ago, nobody has proven it to my satisfaction.
So I have one announcement. So I'll be talking about all this good stuff at I Love APIs in San Jose on October 13th, and that's going to be like at 5 p.m. But you just go to iloveapis.com. So I'll be walking through. I'll be using Lattice actually to show how to compose Spring Cloud microservices. It's going to be good.
This is your first mission as a pivotal operative.
It is, yes.
Did you get the pen from Q? Not from Q. What's the guy's name? Who's the weapons guy in Bond?
Yeah, I got the pen.
We
Was
got
that Q?
the
Yeah. Get your pen.
It'll come in handy. All right, well, we'll see who we can drag out next week. Unless anyone has any words of wisdom as a parting shot, I think I'll go to bed so I can get up early and take my kids to school.
Are you free tomorrow-ish or this week-ish? Let's just do one of those things where...
Come over and do work at my house?
Yeah, I'll just ignore you while sitting in the same room as you.
We could do that.
Okay. It's different from ignoring you from afar.
All right, we'll call it, and then maybe we can work out some details.
Cool, man.
Until
guys.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers.